Recording this, we've got about 70 people who've signed up for the course, but not everybody can attend, unfortunately, live. You know, some people actually have real jobs, you know, but there you go. So we do record these sessions, and they are downloaded to my computer, then they're uploaded to YouTube unlisted. And everybody gets a copy of the link to review. And if you can't be here live, obviously, then unfortunately, you just have to review it when you do have time. This is pivot, right? Maybe that's an overused word, but I think most of you know that I actually woke up on Easter long weekend on Good Friday, and I was a bit upset. You know, out of 365 days a year, I probably only have 1 or 2 down days, maybe 3 in a year. But I was actually feeling a little bit down because of the fact that so many of my clients, so many of my friends were out of work. Some of my kids, I got 5 kids, 2 of them were out of work. 6 million Canadians were unemployed, newly unemployed. 7.2 million people as of yesterday, May 13th, 2020, are on the CERB benefit, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. Hundreds of thousands of more have applied for the CEBA, the Canadian Emergency Business Account. I know, Jayme, you did that.
Yeah, I did,
And
absolutely.
I was upset, and I thought, and then 30 million Americans lost their jobs. So I used to teach entrepreneurship, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my story later, but I used to teach entrepreneurship at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, and then also at the Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa. And everybody who took that course was required in the 3 months that they studied with me to start a business. And I thought I could reboot that, give it a new name, so I gave it Pivot as a name, and then try and help you know, some people start their own business, their own personal business for life. I call it a PB4L, personal business for life. And the other thing that's kind of motivated me, other than the fact so many people are in distress, and I thought I might be able to help, is that a lot of people, for some of the older folks who are taking the course as opposed to some of the younger people, because we do have some very young people who are taking the course, for some of the middle-aged people and older people, I'm 68, so for some of us, we're not really happy with the financial planning industry. You know, it seems to be very self-serving. It doesn't seem to be providing real solutions. Many of them are very, as I said, self-serving. You know, when I left the Senators, I went and I visited with 3 of the so-called top financial planners in Ottawa, and the advice I was getting was so poor. I thought, wow, I should, you know, create my own plan. So I did, and it's based on 2 things. Owning some real estate if you can, and also owning a personal business for life. And those are the only 2 things I think that have ever worked for me and my family, and for a lot of people I coach and I train and I mentor, and friends of mine, they're in the same situation as I am. Those are the only things. Mutual funds, tax-free savings accounts, 401ks in the United States. None of those things seem to be very useful. The other thing that kind of motivates me is that the average Canada pension plan payout for the younger people here on this call today, you know, the average CPP payout was $555 a month, which if you're 15 or 16 years of age, you think, well, $555 a month, that's not that bad, right? But if you actually try and live on that, it's extremely difficult. Social Security in the United States is a little bit better. So the fastest growing number of poor people in Canada and the United States used to be single moms, not anymore. It's the elderly. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to start doing something to perhaps, you know, help people avoid that. So that's kind of how we all ended up here together on this call. But what I'm going to do is, rather than me just talking for an hour and a half, which I'm sure nobody really wants, I've invited some of my former students, some of my coaching clients, some of my friends, you know, over the next 3 months to talk to us about what they've done, in some cases, to overcome very difficult situations. Later on in this course, because I know some of the people on this in this course really are interested in real estate, some are very interested in business. You're going to get both, but one of the young people we're going to hear from later in the course, Chris Long, Has been a single dad since he was a teenager. He trained him. He came from a very difficult background. I won't go into detail. Maybe Chris will when he talks to us later in this course. But you know, really difficult home life, just as difficult as you probably could describe. And and he trained himself as a carpenter. He's brought himself up and his daughter as well from the time he was a teen and she was just a newborn. And and you're going to hear how he has developed an incredible business called Long Yards, which I think will already has made him a millionaire, but might make him a multimillionaire and even possibly a billionaire. And this is for somebody who really is up by the bootstraps. But we're going to hear about that later. So we're going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about business. But today, I'm really, really glad that we're going to hear from Jayme Montero, who is, just wave hi, Jayme.
Hi.
And we're going to hear about how Jayme became an entrepreneur, her journey, which was not an easy journey. I could tell you for the women on this call that when they go to see a bank, I have a young client, she was 26, she had 1,000 clients. She was an RMT. When she went to the bank to ask for some help to start her business, the bankers practically, I was there, the bankers practically laughed at her and said, well, you better send your mom and dad in here. She's 26 with 1,000 RMT clients. And I said to the young woman, I said, you know, I think this meeting is over. We walked out and we did some other kinds of financing for her. So, you know, that's kind of another level of or hurdle that you have to get over. But anyway, we're going to hear about Jayme and how she has gone from, getting, I think, fired or laid off, I'm not sure which, to a very successful business, and how she's recently had to pivot yet again to get Purrdy Paws through this very difficult COVID-19 thing. So Jayme, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll run the slides.
Okay.
I'm going to share the screen, so you should be able to see my screen here in a minute. Can you see it okay, Jayme?
I can.
All right. Let's get going.
Okay, so I own Purrdy Paws Pet Grooming Spa in Ottawa, as well as Purrdy Paws Mobile Spa in Ottawa. And we have a active brick and mortar spa and for dogs and for cats. I own the only feline exclusive mobile, to my knowledge, in Canada. Mobile grooming is pretty popular in the States, but I brought it here to be able to help the felines. And I also own a canine van as well. So, sorry, I'm not a great public speaker like Bruce is, so I'll do my best. My decision to change the direction of my career, I worked in, well, previously, I also was a teenage mom. I was a single mom at 15. So I had no formal education whatsoever. I actually didn't even attend high school. I did high school all correspondently, which was a very challenging time for me. I worked in bars and restaurants, very unsatisfied with my career choice, ended up in a veterinary clinic, was quite happy there. I loved working with the animals and helping people, and definitely knew that that was my direction and what I was meant to do. However, I ended up getting terminated when we were bought out by a large corporation and things were becoming unmoral, and it was I had brought it to the attention of the higher ups, and they didn't really like that. So I got terminated, and it basically pushed me into a position where I had, at that point, 3 children and a husband, and I needed to be able to provide for my family and my fur family as well. So I went to cat grooming school.
Before you continue, we got a very nice little comment here from Paula. And by the way, some of you have already figured out there's a chat function here. So if you have questions for Jayme, please feel free to put them in. I'll read the chat box. Jayme.
Perfect.
By the way, Jayme, you're doing a great job. So Paula,
I'm very nervous. Thank you.
You're doing a great job. Paula says, don't be nervous. My 2 poodles are booked to come to your spa on the 24th.
Amazing. I'm so excited.
All right. So keep going. You're doing great.
Okay, so just previous to my termination, I kind of knew that I was going to take a different direction with my career. I didn't know that I would be a business owner. I thought I would do it more of a side hobby, make some extra income for my family. I actually wanted to groom dogs. So I started researching about dog grooming schools, and unfortunately, the time that was required, I wasn't able to get away from my family for that long or not provide for my family financially. So I found online, just on a whim, the National Cat Groomers Institute of America, which is in South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina. And I registered to go on a 2-week program and fly, which I'm terrified to fly. My husband supported me fully in going, and the whole intention of this was to see if I even liked grooming. I had no intention of ever grooming cats. I just wanted to go get a taste for it on a 2 weeks that I could afford to go away for. So in July 2013, I did attend the National Cat Groomers Institute. I became a CFMG, which is a certified feline master groomer. I became sorry, I have to look at the numbers here. It made me the 11th certified feline master groomer in Ontario, the 27th in Canada, and the 153rd in the world. I started out, when I came back, like I said, it was more of a side hustle. I had no intention of being a formal business owner or expanding or having employees or doing any of those things. I didn't want to. I wanted some side income. And I started working in people's homes, grooming their cats, which I quickly learned was not for me. So I didn't have a business plan, obviously, and on a 2-week program of doing something that I really wasn't sure if I was even going to continue doing. I hadn't even thought about a business plan or what I was actually going to do with this cat grooming stuff. But I did have a fair amount of requests, and I started thinking about how I could continue it as a side hustle and make it a little bit safer for myself. So when I had gone away to school in South Carolina, they actually showed us some mobile units where people were doing grooming cats and dogs out of mobile units. And I thought this would be very interesting for me to bring this to Ottawa and do cats out of a van. Again, not really thinking it was going to amount to much, just thinking I would continue a side hustle and work in the veterinary clinic. So I went to the business development bank because that's where I was referred to. I was told that was a place that would help me. And I brought my idea without a formal business plan because I really didn't know how to make one. It was just an initial meet and greet. And I was quickly basically told that my idea was stupid, that nobody would help me, and that I had better off find a different career path. And this was just ridiculous. So I went to Star Motors in Ottawa. I ended up talking to a sales gentleman there who was fantastic. And although he also thought that my idea was pretty off the wall and without a business plan or any figures, they initially weren't really interested in selling me a van because I had no income, very little income at that time. I was on my way out of the veterinary world. I had no dollars to my name to put down. I had no plan on how I was going to pay for the van. I just wanted them to sell me a van, and I wanted them to pay for half of the upfitting as well.
And
So,
how much was the van? Did you remember?
I think the van was somewhere, it was a demo, so I got a bit of a break on it. And at that time in 2013, I think it was somewhere around 55,000. My estimated cost of the upfit itself was an additional 45
Wow.
plus taxes. So I was pretty much looking at, around $100,000 investment at that point.
That's
With no
incredible. I
money.
mean, it must have looked like Mount Everest.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And when they asked if I could even show them any stats or figures of other businesses that had the same business model, I couldn't find anyone that was feline exclusive and mobile in Canada to even give them a comparison. So I pushed myself and did a little bit. Again, like I didn't even know much about running a business, but I talked to some people that were friends and quickly found out that if I registered for HST, then I would be able to claim the HST back on the purchase of the vehicle, which at that time I think was somewhere around between 9 and 12,000. I can't remember the numbers now. It's
Yeah, it
been
would have
too
been
long.
over 12. It would have been over 12,000.
Yeah, and so when I basically gave them my word that I would come back with this check in 3 months' time because I would have to register for HST, wait the quarterly period, get the funds sent to me, and then come back with this as a deposit on the truck
So
on this large purchase.
can I stop you there for a second?
Of course.
So to everybody on the call, I mean, you can see why this case study is so important. I think most people, including myself, learn best by storytelling as opposed to just theory. And so I've been teaching for a long time, and I've been using case studies literally since I started. But there are a couple of things that come to mind here. Number one, Jayme was not easily deterred. Number two, she was qualified to do this. She had some skills that were obviously appropriate. She went and did her training for that master's certificate that she had, and she has that entrepreneur thing, you know, the never say die. You know, if you're not willing to push harder as Jayme did, you'll never ever get anywhere as an entrepreneur. And this is why I wanted you to hear this. So you can see on the screen here, I think that was your first van.
Yeah, that's a sort of an outside picture of the vehicle. It's a commercial van that's really popular for most construction people. That was another stereotype that I had to overcome, was you didn't often see, especially in 2013, there wasn't women driving these vehicles. It's a very large vehicle. It's 20 feet long, 10 feet wide, 6 feet inside tall. You didn't see 5'3" women driving these things around. So once I had gotten the okay from Star Motors, which was fantastic, I had to kind of plan how I was going to market myself, again, with no money. I didn't have any money. I had already promised Star Motors an HST check that hadn't even come through. I had made a business plan with the people that were outfitting the van for the other half of the outfit that I would have to make payment arrangements myself. They were also willing to take a chance on me, which was incredible. So I purchased a booth, which I think at the time, it was the very first Ottawa Pet Expo. They've had a yearly Pet Expo since then, but this was their very first attempt at a Pet Expo. And I was renting a booth to promote myself with a van that I did not have in my hands, and with a business plan that I wasn't even sure was going to actually work. Yeah, so I got the van in December. I attended Pet Expo in November. A month later, my van was complete. I cried a lot. My first very few clients that I had, again, I had this huge overhead of van payments, promises to make these other payments to the company that did the upfit, and everything that could go wrong on my first day went wrong. My water froze. It was December, as you can imagine. I didn't even know how to work any of these vans, let alone hardly drive them. I was panicking because I was driving in the winter in a big vehicle with limited visibility. My water froze. I had a burst pipe. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, and the phone wasn't ringing. I wasn't getting a lot of calls. But when the spring came around, which I've learned now, being in the grooming industry, it's a very popular time. By then I had driven around. I had parked my van in various places doing errands, which I quickly found out was a great way to expose myself with my van. My van became my best source of marketing because of the big logos, my phone number, and the fact that it had a giant cat on it, and people were always like, "What is this thing?" So they would call.
So Jayme, you've seen me at my easy button, right, before. So I'm going to play this easy button for everybody.
That was easy.
So I'll do it again.
That was easy.
So the reason I show this is, I know it's corny, but the reason I show this is Jayme just really hit on an important point. That is that whatever your business is, tech business, service business, real estate business, whatever it might be, if you don't have an easy button, a button that you push and customers and clients appear, your business is doomed. And what Jayme found was that the Pet Expo didn't work, probably newspaper ads wouldn't work, radio ads wouldn't work, even television ads wouldn't work, but the 24/7, 365 billboard that she was driving, the van with all of the drawings and everything else, the decals that you saw, that was 24/7, 365 advertising, and she could park it anywhere. It's legal, right?
Yeah.
And hundreds of thousands of people would drive by, would walk by, would see it. So you guys, when you're designing your own business, have to be able to tell me, because you've got what is it, May, June, and July. You're all going to start your own business, the way Jayme did, and you're all going to tell me, yes, I think I've got an easy button, because without that, you're doomed. All right, Jayme.
It was an $800 investment that continues to bring me clients no matter where I go. Everybody sees it. I kept the logo very simple too on the van, so it's really easy for people to read it and read the phone number.
Yeah,
It's very simple.
and I love the name Purrdy Paws. Although
It
for
took me a while to come up with that.
yeah, it's, you know, Jayme, I know you're very creative, but for a lot of the dog owners out there, how do they react to it?
You know what? Honestly, they don't seem to always correlate where it came from, but because I planned on just having the one truck and just doing my own thing, working for myself, doing cats, I didn't think of a more generalized name. But you know what? It hasn't changed a thing.
Don't change it. Don't change it. It's great. All right. So how did you get into the dog thing?
Right. So as I was going around and people recognized that, you know, it was a grooming business, people just assumed because cat grooming, well, one wasn't readily accepted and people didn't understand that cats needed to be groomed to begin with. They were asking, well, can't you just groom my dog? And I hadn't been trained on dog grooming, so absolutely not. I could not groom their dog. I also designed the interior of my van with, you know, cat grooming in mind. It's a completely different setup. I didn't really know where to start, but the inquiries kept coming in. I kept getting busier with felines. Uh, I recognized very quickly that there was a large market for the mobile grooming for dogs, also because of the types of clientele that I was coming into contact with the cats. Multi-pet households, most people that have a cat often have a dog. There are some exceptions, obviously, but many of them had a dog, and many of the clients that I was reaching really did have issues getting places with their pets. A lot of people that were, you know, disabled, just didn't drive, the elderly. I was touching such a broad range of clients, and people's pets were not being serviced because they just did not have a means to get them anywhere. So I said, well, the first one is going really well. Why don't I go back to Star Motors and see if they'd be willing to make some sort of arrangement with me for a second truck? I made all my payments on time. I came through with my HST check as promised. They had no reason to turn me away. And of course, there was a little bit.
Right. So I just wanted to stop. I'll stop you when I want to reinforce a point that you just made. Did you notice how right from the get-go, Jayme wanted to live up to her word? And sometimes, you know, I understand we all have failed. I mean, I failed. I'm sure everybody on the call has failed to live up to their word, but not for lack of trying. And I've known Jayme for a long time. And when she says she's going to do something, you can just put that in the bank. So number one thing in life, I think, is trust. And if you can have a stakeholder group that is your clients, your customers, your suppliers, your employees, your lenders, whatever, everybody, your coach, everybody in your sort of network, if they are trustable, if you like and trust them, your life is going to be much better. And Jayme, you know, it's kind of like what the universe says. You throw that out there, Jayme, and it comes back to you. I really believe that.
Oh, 100%. I didn't have to come up with the business plan because I had already made the craziest business plan work. I started grooming cats and nobody even heard of that before or even thought that that would even be a productive business.
Just to be on point here, Paula, by the way, Jayme grooms my wife's cat, Sammy. So, you know, just so you know, I'm a client too. All right. So you bought a second van. Okay. What happened then?
I did. So same thing, I had to go to another company at that point and have the upfit done. That was a bit of a challenge as well because my original upfitting company had gone bankrupt, lost their entire business. So I had to find somebody else and make a new arrangement with a new person. So that was a bit challenging. But once that van got built and hit the road, it was kind of clear sailing from there. The phone started ringing. I now had 2 trucks on the road with the same type of branding. I don't have a picture here, but the other truck is exactly the same, except that it has a poodle as the logo rather than the cat. So you can differentiate between the feline van and the canine van, but the logo stayed the same. Then year 3 came. I was having a lot of challenges, but a lot of fun with the grooming. And again, just wanted to, I don't know. I don't even really know what the push was to have a brick and mortar. I just casually started looking around in my travels. I got to travel all over the city with the mobiles. So I got to see a bunch of different areas, and I would notice if people were walking around with their pets, dogs in particular, because, you know, most people aren't able to bring their felines to a spa. So I wanted to have a brick and mortar that focused on dogs, and I wanted to put it in the perfect area of town. there's a lot of competition for brick and mortar grooming shops and a lot of great grooming shops out there. So I really kept my eyes peeled, narrowed it down to a couple of areas, and looked for lease signs in the window. So 732 Bank Street came up for lease just after I almost signed an agreement with a different real estate agent, and something just didn't sit right in my gut. It was still in the same area. It was a side street. I didn't have frontage to the main street. I felt pretty confident in my brand recognition because people recognized my brand and started to trust me by year 3. But I really felt that if I had a brick and mortar, I needed more exposure and more walkability, especially if I was going to look in the glebe. So 732 Bank Street came up for lease. I happened to make a random phone call on another property on another issue, ended up getting connected with Bruce by chance. I think life has a way of just bringing people together, and he actually really helped me sign this deal at 732 Bank Street with a pretty difficult difficult lease arrangement. So he was able to get me through that hump as well.
Yeah. So, women have many more challenges in business usually than men do. We mentioned one of them, which was with a lender, and with the truck and other things. And women have other issues. I won't go into the details on this call, but Jayme has to deal with all kinds of issues that many of the women on this call will understand without me going into any details. For those of you who are not living in Ottawa, Bank Street is very much a downtown. This location that Jayme is referring to is very walkable. It's a main street, and it's in the inner city. So a pretty good location, I think.
I'm very, very pet friendly. All the stores around me, that was another bonus that I didn't even really realize how pet friendly it was. I saw a lot of people with dogs there, but now getting to know the other businesses in the area since I've been there for a few years, there's a lot of stores that allow people to actually come in with their pets, which just makes the area even better for my business because it is so pet friendly. Yeah, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. I don't think that I've run into anything that has just smooth sailed for me. It's definitely kept this journey very interesting. It's definitely the best decision that I've ever made to start my businesses and my business plans and my intentions, but I was making some pretty bad business decisions and didn't even really realize some of the things that I was doing wrong. So it took till 2018. I had started in 2013, and I would say that it's taken up until the last 2 years to actually start making the changes. I'm not somebody who's great with change, which sounds funny because I've done so many crazy things about starting this whole business and jumping from one thing to the other. But once I get into a routine, even if it's a bad routine and it's not really working for me, I get stuck. And I've had to really realize that some of the things that I was doing, were actually hurting me in my business. I'm a giver. I was putting everybody else before myself, including my employees. And it really hurt me financially and emotionally.
And I would say that this is a really important point. With my American clients, I have to tell you, Jayme, I don't have this issue. American businessmen and businesswomen tend to put themselves first, but Canadian and Australian, Swedish, and other people I coach and mentor, they tend to put everyone before themselves. And you have to strike the right balance. You can't, my wife says it best, you don't have to set your clothes on fire to keep the other people warm.
Yeah, well, I was setting my clothes on fire
yeah,
daily.
exactly, to keep some of your poor employees around. And the next thing I wanted to reinforce for Jayme and for everybody on the call is Warren Buffett, who's a famous investor, maybe the most famous investor on the planet, said, other than the decision to start a business, the next most important decision you make is who is on the bus with you. So he's talking about your advisors, your bankers, your lawyers, your accountants, your bookkeeper, and of course your employees and suppliers too. So you want to have people, I've said it now a couple of times, you want to have people around you that really have not only their own interests at heart, but yours as well, and that you can trust them. And I think this is a hard lesson that you learned, Jayme.
It was, and it took until the last 2 years. That's a long time to put yourself in debt. I had to remortgage my home over it. I emptied all my savings. Like, it was a very, very bad time. And it took me literally hitting rock bottom to be able to bounce back. I think that most people, if they're not in the true entrepreneur mindset, that was a pretty dark place. And it was definitely a place where almost considered. So yes, we are going to be ready for the 1st of April, but we are in some delays. We're basically almost ready to go, but that's very exciting. The location that I chose, because I was spending a lot of money on renting a spot for my vans to be parked, that was another challenge with my vans. With my first one, I didn't have the funds to actually rent a location to have it parked. So I would get up in the winter at 5 o'clock in the morning with a hair dryer and de-thaw for 2 hours.
Oh my God.
All of my back piping to make sure that I could run for the day, every single day, sometimes 4 in the morning if it was a really cold morning. So it was very, I was spending a lot of money in the wrong places. One of the changes I had to make was just renting a location that wasn't bringing me in any revenue. So I was renting a spot to park my vans, but it wasn't making me any money. It was just costing me money. So this location, I was able to park 2 trucks and a trailer comfortably and build the other side where we can actually start grooming and actually generate revenue from the same location.
So I want to underline the point that Jayme just made, brilliantly done, is as an entrepreneur, this is the magic of being an entrepreneur. Sometimes you can turn a cost center into a profit center. And the reason entrepreneurs can do this, it's like magic, you know, it's like a rabbit from the hat, you know. The reason that people like Jayme can do that sort of thing is that she looks at, okay, I have to park my vans somewhere. I'm renting parking spots. I'm spending hours defrosting the pipes. Some people might have missed that, Jayme, because there's a little outage with the internet.
Okay.
But that's okay. But she rents a place where she can park the vans and actually do some grooming there. So that cost center has now become a profit center. I don't know if I described it very well, but that's what you did, Jayme.
Yeah, and it absolutely will. It's costing me $1,000 more to rent this location to have somewhere where I can generate income than what I was paying just to park my vans. Future plans. So as I mentioned, we would like to, the vans are very expensive. There's a lot of overhead with them. And when they go down, it shuts down my entire business. The biggest problem with that is that because I'm running my business out of the mobile vehicle and I require the mobile vehicle to do my service, when the van goes in for repairs and I get told it's a week of repairs, that's a week of income that I've lost and a lot of rescheduling headaches. So it's actually eating up a lot of my time and that's costing me money too. So my husband and I discussed building a trailer. So we're actually actively looking right now to build a grooming trailer, less overhead, no monthly payments on a vehicle. The insurance will lump into my vehicle insurance that's pulling the trailer, which will save money. We're able to use the vehicle that we're going to purchase. We're going to sell our car and use a vehicle multi-purpose that we can pull with the trailer and use as our family car, which is actually saving us money as well. And we can write off the insurance and the vehicle payment and everything that we weren't able to do before. So we can write that through the business. And that way, if one of these trucks goes down, we just hook up to the trailer and business can resume as usual. So that's been a huge problem for us. Future plans. Well, Bruce and I are actively chatting about that. I would love to own some acreage where we can have a variety of services. A lot of our clients, once they build a trusting relationship with you, they look for other avenues within your industry. They want you to offer all of it to them: dog walking, pet sitting, boarding. They trust us. They trust their pets with us. So we're looking to expand into all of those avenues at one centralized location. Yeah, so I think my biggest falls were, one, I tried to do everything myself. It's impossible. You can't expand and put everything on yourself. I really pressured myself, and I think that's also part of just being a woman and a mom that like runs a household. I'm used to kind of running the household my way, and I took that personal mindset of mine, and I applied it to my business, which was really wrong. And it caused a lot of mistakes along the way. I didn't have a good accounting system. I didn't know my numbers. I'm still learning all of that. And I have a good accounting firm that, you know, it cost me money, but it saved me a lot of money and headaches. And dealing with CRA, they take care of all of that, those awful things as being a business owner for me. Yeah. I put myself, and I'm not afraid to say it, I put myself about $80,000 in arrears with CRA.
Wow.
Because I had bad accounting. I hired a cheaper accounting firm because I was trying to save money, and it cost me, it's still costing me. I'm almost there. I'm almost paid off now, but it was a massive, massive error. And to verify, as Bruce had mentioned earlier, verify everybody that's in your circle. Not everybody has your best interests. And the biggest problem for me is I did not cut ties with people that I should have when I should have. The minute that someone does not have your business interest in mind, whether they're an employee, a friend, a family member, it really doesn't matter. And Bruce reiterated that to me when we started just recently, hired him as now a coach, which again, I should have done these types of things in the beginning. It would have been a lot easier. But cut the ties right away, because those people will only bring you and your business down. For sure. Invest in yourself. Like, that was one of the areas that I really dropped the ball, and why my business did not grow as quickly and wasn't as successful as it could have been in the very beginning. We're definitely seeing the growth now, but I took all my investment, including my own energy, and put it into my employees and everybody around me, and made sure everybody else was taken care of first, and really did not take care of myself, mental health wise, physical, everything. I just worked and worked and worked to make everybody else happy. And when you start verifying people and bringing the right people into your circle, you don't have to take care of them. You all take care of each other, and you can work as a unit.
Right.
And it's not draining on one person just trying to provide for everyone. So I wish I had done that sooner. It would have saved me a lot of headaches. And I recommend business coaching, because it's nice to be able to sit with somebody that can hear your crazy ideas and not think that they're crazy. It was very refreshing when Bruce and I got to sit about, you know, plans that I haven't actually even put the action into yet. But it was very motivating to sit with someone who said, yeah, you know what, I could see how this would work, or have you thought about this, or what if this fails, just to give you a different perspective from someone who's got an open mind. So that's something that I should have, knowing that I was going to continue expanding, I wish I had invested in business coaching sooner.
Well, that's a very nice ad for me you just gave. I really
It's truth,
appreciate
though. It's truth.
I really appreciate that. I'm a little, I'm blushing, but thank you. So it's amazing what Jayme has done. You know, when she you know, people are, you can probably read the chat box, but people are really impressed with your honesty and your presentation. Jayme, I mean, this is really good. I mean,
But you know what I did is I hired someone to help me put the slideshow together. When I started fighting with it, and this is another thing that I've learned through my business, I would have fought through this to try to do it myself. And when I realized that I was failing in it really miserably within day 2, and I was getting frustrated, I'm like, you know what, I'd rather just work with somebody that can help me do this. And also with my social media now, I used to do it all myself, stay up many, many hours after working a 14-hour day, spend another 3 hours on social media trying to keep up with that. And that's been one of my recent investments. It's brand new. And I said, you know what? I need to get some sleep at night, and I'm going to hire someone that is an expert in that to assist me. So she assisted me with this, so I can't take all the credit.
So Roxanne says, wonderful presentation, well merited, success. And the animals, thank you. Isn't that wonderful? But wait, Roxanne, you haven't heard the rest of it. I think I've got a few more slides here that I'm going to talk about. All right, so can I talk about a couple things involving you, Jayme?
Sure.
All right, so I added a few slides to Jayme's slide deck, which was wonderful. Everybody is raving about it. And if you have any questions for Jayme, is it okay? Do you know where the chat box is on Zoom?
Let's see if I can open this up.
Yeah, so if you can find it, you probably see a little orange light blinking at you up top, and you can just click on it. If you feel comfortable, Jayme, doing that, can you put your email address in the chat box so if people have
Absolutely.
questions? Because one of the things that I really want to encourage the people who are involved in Pivot, who are taking the course, is they shouldn't just be talking to me. I mean, I love to hear from you, and I'm going to hear from all of you guys, but I want to promote some crosstalk, all right? Which means that on the chat box, as questions come up, if you think you can answer those, have a go at it, answer them, and you can start to get to know each other. I'm not allowed to disclose everybody's email address without their permission to everybody else, but as we get to know each other in the next 3 months, you might be comfortable sharing your email address with the other students in the course, because in all the classes I've ever taught, that crosstalk becomes really valuable. So Jayme has put her information there. It's info@PurrdyPawsMobileSpa.com. You can see it.
It's a long one.
It's a long one, but there you know it's easy to remember. Info@PurrdyPawsMobileSpa.com. And thank you. So one of the ideas that Jayme came to me with fairly recently was she wants to buy you know, a little kind of ranch with a house on it and maybe a few barns on it, and turn it into a dog park because there isn't really enough you know, space in town after town after town, not just in the city where Jayme lives, but virtually every city. You know, you have to walk behind your dog, you know, on a leash, and imagine spending your whole life, you know, with this on you. It can't be great. So she came up with a name called Purrdy Paws Park, which I think is great. And look at the tagline. Taglines are very important, right? So I'm Prof. Bruce, and my tagline for many years has been making impossible possible. Prof. Bruce, making impossible possible. So as you're thinking about what business you're going to start in this 3 months that you've got with me, I want you to think of a name, and I want you to think of a tagline. That tagline is part of your branding. So in this case, Jayme came up with Purrdy Paws Park, a place for the whole pack. I like that because I was a Cub Scout when I was a little boy. We were part of the wolf pack, and it really, when I saw that, I had goosebumps. I think it's brilliant. So what Jayme and I are talking about is a typical dog park where there are some, they're not very many, but where there are some, they're not that bad. You know, this is one close to my home in Ottawa called the Bruce Pit, and you can have an off-leash moment with your dog in the park. And I'm just going to show you a few pictures. So here's another picture. There's a nice pond here. There's the occasional bench, but there's nothing in the park other than the occasional bench, and that's it. If you want a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, you know, a sandwich, you want to have a barbecue with your friends who also have dogs, there's nothing there. So Jayme's idea is to create a park that has a lot of services. And I showed Jayme these pictures that I had taken at Bruce Pit, and people are coming, this is Ontario, people are coming from, you can see this license plate, people are coming from Quebec, they're driving, you know, 60 kilometers, 100 kilometers to, you know, to let their dog have a bit of freedom. And I thought, wow, that's just not good enough. And this is one of my drawings. I am not going to go through this. You know, as people on the call who know me, you know, I do a lot of sketching, and I'm an engineer, not an artist, obviously not an architect, so my sketching is really bad. But this is a sketch I drew up of a potential dog park, and I'll simplify it for you in the next slide. What are the kind of uses? There's going to be a lot of free stuff in this dog park, in Purrdy Paws Park. You know, there might be a splash pad for kids, obviously parking, there'd be some mountain biking trails, a barbecue and picnic area, a games area, a sports area, all kinds of fun things that people can do and be free to use. But there would be revenue generating. You think about how brilliant that move was to open the West End location for Jayme, to turn a cost center into a profit center. This is similar. Turn a dog park into a profit center. Maybe you could have a vet clinic there. You could certainly have, you know, pet supply store. You could have, obviously, grooming going on there. You could have you could have weddings there, I suppose. You could have coffee, tea, and sandwich shop. There's a million ideas for generating revenues there that I really like. You know, having some food trucks there and all kinds of other things that we're looking at so for this park. So this park would be a place also, probably the most important line on this is actually the first one. I want to underline that for you, is having some memberships. All right, so this dog park would actually be a members only place. And that's really important. And it would have some sponsors. I have some sponsors for this course, which I'm gonna do a little ad in a minute talking about the people who helped me make this course possible. But that is really important, and I'll show you why. A big part of what Jayme has done is bootstrap financing. I mean, that I hadn't heard that story until today, that Jayme used her HST rebate, which is called an ITC, an input tax credit, to actually help her bootstrap her business. That HST rebate, the ITC credit that she got, actually was a big part of her initial funding for her for Purrdy Paws. And so here's some things that I think Jayme can do, and we've been talking about it. She could pre-sale because she has, how many clients do you have, Jayme?
Between the three businesses, I think we're up to somewhere around 6,000 and growing. And I suspect after this closure, we've had, I'm getting about 100 to 150 new, at least inquiries almost every 2 days since we closed 8 weeks ago. Yeah.
So one of the things that we're thinking about doing is pre-selling some of these dog park memberships. If she sells, say, if a membership costs $30 a year, which is not too much, and she sold 500 of those for 2 years, she'd raise 30,000. But if she sold 1,000 of them, it'd be 60,000. She has 6,000 clients growing at 150 every 2 days. So who knows, if she sold 6,000, she would be floating in money to start Purrdy Paws Park. And you know, you might think, oh, this is impossible, that you can't possibly do it. But there's lots of businesses out there. I think pretty much everybody on the call probably has some Canadian Tire money, which you can see on the screen there in their drawer somewhere. And many of you may have some Disney dollars. So big companies like Disney and Canadian Tire have been doing this for a long time. The other thing that Jayme might consider doing is having some sponsors, right? People, you know, who supply her with grooming tools, people who supply her with, pet toys, people who supply pet food. I mean, these people are really interested, I think, in being part of a new big park. And don't forget, guys, once Jayme has established Purrdy Paws Park, a place for the whole pack, as a successful business operation, there's no reason why she couldn't have 30 of them. She could have 300 of them. This could be a big business on its own. All right. And maybe she could sell some gift certificates too for Purrdy Paws. No, I'll show you an example of that in a second. So this is all part of self-capitalization. So a lot of you might be thinking, gee, I could build a really great business if Rich Uncle Buck would only give me $1 million. The problem with that approach is there aren't enough rich Uncle Bucks to give each of us $1 million to start a business. And Jayme, I don't think rich Uncle Buck showed up at your door with $1 million.
No.
All right, so I'm going to show you what happened here. This is a spa that was started by Christine and Shane a generation ago. And they issued gift certificates in the spa because when they were looking at their business model, when I was helping them with their business model a generation ago, like 25 years ago, I asked them, who are most of your clients? And it turns out most of the clients for the spa were female, about 95 to 97% female and 3 or 4 or 5% male. So I asked them, what do men want from your spa? They're not coming in any great numbers. What do they want from the spa? And both Shane and Christine said, well, really, they don't really want anything. They don't want facials, at least not then. Maybe today they might, but they didn't want facials or manicures or pedicures or hair coloring. At least they might have hair. I don't have any, but they didn't want anything from the spa. I said, I think you're wrong. I think they want gift certificates, because what do men want to do? They want to give nice things to their girlfriends and their partners, their wives, their spouses, right? And so the first Christmas that they offered these gift certificates, they sold $250,000 worth, in about 6 weeks. And that was an important part of the capital they needed to purchase this location, because they wanted to buy the location, not just rent. So I want you guys to understand self-capitalization is another element of the businesses that you're starting. I want to hear from you about your name for your business, your tagline, your easy button marketing plan. But I also want to hear a financing plan. And please don't say, if Rich Uncle Buck shows up with $1 million, I can put my ID in place. That's not going to work in this class, okay? So this is what Shane and Christine did. Here's another example. This is another local Ottawa, Toronto entrepreneur. Her name is Tracy Clark. She bought Bridgehead about 30 years ago out of bankruptcy, and she wanted to build a big new roastery in downtown Ottawa, which cost $15 million. And somebody came along, in this case, a rich Uncle Buck came along from Toronto and said, look, I'll give you the $3 million of equity you need, but I want to own 50% of your business. And Tracy came to see me and she said, what am I going to do? I need the equity to build the roastery to, in this new location. And I said, you're going to give up 50% of your business for this $3 million? She said, well, I don't know if I have any other choice. And I said, yeah, I think you do. So what she did was she created this campaign called Plant-A-Bean, and it turned out Bridgehead customers bought this. I think she ended up selling $3.5 million in these certificates, by the way, Jayme. And she didn't have to give up any equity in her business, right? Because people would buy these certificates. So let's say you go to Bridgehead every day and you spend $5 a day, and you go there 5 days a week, spend $25. It means in 10 weeks you spent $250 at Bridgehead. That's a lot. So people could buy these certificates from Tracy for $200 and got them $250 worth of coffee and muffins and sandwiches and stuff like that. So they got a really good margin, 20%. You don't get that from your bank, do you, Jayme?
No.
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 But she sold like $3.5 million, and that is another form of bootstrap capital or self-capitalization. All right, now we're going to talk about Jayme's upfit business and trailer business. She just kind of mentioned that a little bit. So Jayme has in her mind, she and her husband right now are building one of these trailers. I just stole this off the internet. This is not her trailer. But it gives you an idea, and I think some people on the call were saying, as you were talking about the vans, they were saying, she should use trailers, she should use trailers. So yeah. You already had figured that out.
Yeah.
But I want to show everybody what a business model does. So think about Purrdy Paws Park. It's one park, makes a little bit of money, we hope. Life is good. But it's also the potential to have 30 parks in Toronto, in Calgary, in Kelowna, in Monterey, California, maybe in some place a little warmer too, so you can go visit.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
At some point. But I want to show you what a modern era business model could look like on the trailer business. So this is again my slide on self-capitalization. So how would Jayme scale up a big trailer business? And I'll show you what I have in mind. Maybe if she's selling a trailer all fit up, ready to go with the Purrdy Paws brand, maybe she gets a 30% or even a 50% deposit. So that deposit is a way to finance at least some of the costs of starting a trailer business. Maybe as she, when you're thinking about branding all these trailers, maybe she'll have 500 of these trailers running around North America, maybe 1,000, maybe more. They're all these moving billboards, which, as Jayme said, is her easy button, her easy marketing button. So these decals, hang on, I've got to mute somebody here. So these decals, sponsors will want to go on there. So what's your biggest pet food or your favorite pet food for a dog? What brand is your favorite?
I love Prof, and they're a really great company and very transparent company. And I would suspect that if I approached them with a really strong business plan, that they would jump on with some sponsorship.
What is the name of the brand?
Prof, F-R-O-M-M.
From. So can you imagine, you guys, if you had a 500, 1,000, 1,500, who knows, 5,000 of these trailers running around North America, Purrdy Paws, mobile pet grooming, and it had, From on it. A billboard, Jayme, just so you know, a billboard in Ottawa, which is a small town, it's not Los Angeles or Chicago, a billboard in Ottawa costs $3,500 a month, one side.
I bet.
So if you had 1,500 of these legal billboards running around cities around North America, always on the move, I think it'd be worth a lot of money to From.
100%.
So I want to make sure everybody understands what self-capitalization is. These are just some samples. I'm going to go into it in more detail in a future lecture, but I want you to really understand that there's a lot behind the idea of bootstrapping your business, other than just going to a bank. So what are some of the other options here? So one of the things that Jayme and I talked about is, what if Jayme were to say to an entrepreneur in Nashville, you can have a Purrdy Paws trailer, grooming trailer. It normally costs $80,000, but if you could find $10,000 or $15,000 as a deposit, we'll send the trailer to you. And instead of you buying it from us, we'll lease it to you, and we'll take a percentage of your revenues. The neat thing about this is, if somebody goes to, and goes to the grooming school, has the skills, they can earn I think they can earn 6 figures. Is that right, Jayme?
Oh yeah, no, easily. I would say that, after a couple of years, I would say year 2, even just working by myself, I was doing in one vehicle 6 figures in sales.
Yeah. So if somebody, let's just make it simple. If somebody was had one of these trailers, they had to put a little bit of money down to help with the whole thing and to make sure that they're committed. And you took, say, 10% of their revenues, just as a round number, and they're making $125,000 a year. In other words, they're paying a royalty to Purrdy Paws and to Jayme of about $10,000 or $12,000 a year. But that's so that they can have a job that pays more than minimum wage, because last time I checked, minimum wage doesn't get you to 6 figures.
No.
Okay, so that's a business model. And if she had 1,000 of these running around, North America, forgetting about the sponsorship and all the rest, and each one was generating $10,000 in royalty payments, if you multiply 1,000 by 10,000, Jayme, do you know what you get?
A lot.
A lot. It's $10 million a year. So at that point, you can then, sit back and maybe smell the roses or smell the coffee a little bit more.
Yeah, nice.
So I want everybody to understand how it can really, really blossom into a whole other sort of a kind of thing. All right. So what I'm going to reserve is, I have a model that I want to show you guys, which is very similar to this model that we've just gone through for Jayme. It's another young client of mine by the name of Michael Golubov. He has developed a model which is a mold inspection service, which also has a real estate component to it. And I know there's a lot of real estate guys on the call here today, and who will watch it when they have time. So I am going to make sure that before the end of this course, and hopefully very soon, maybe in class 2, I will be able to get to this. All right. So I think you'll find this a really interesting example, and I think it's very relevant to what you're doing as well, Jayme. Now, I did promise you that I would run a little ad. We've got about another half hour to go before we're done, so we go to the bottom of the hour. And I have to thank my sponsors. This is a former student of mine, Siavash Naruzian. He started in my class. I think it was at the Telfer School of Management. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was there. And he started Empire Deck and Fence just because he had to. And it grew into a $3.5 million a year business on its way to much more, assuming that we can get back to work fairly soon. So I want to express my gratitude to Siavash. He has not 1, but 2 degrees, one in chemical engineering and one in commerce, and he's running Empire Deck and Fence very successfully. I wanted to thank Shannon and Chris, who run Fan Saves. It's a tech business involved in sports. I've been involved in sports as the founder of the Ottawa Senators, and they really came to the plate as well to help out to make this course possible. And thank you, Chris and Shannon. And I had to show you this one. This is Peter Hodowitz, who owns Just the Spot. It's very similar kind of concept to what you're going to hear from Chris Long at Long Yards. And Peter's one of only 3 people in the world that I know who've come close to achieving Tim Ferriss's goal of the 4-hour work week. I have not achieved that, so I admit I'm a failure in that regard. And Jayme, you probably are not there either.
Yeah, not even close.
Not even close. But Peter is. And he's an engineer as well, and he runs Just the Spot. It's a wonderful business, a business model I introduced him to, and he gave me a very nice testimonial, and he helped with some funding for the course. And he said, I'm on track to reach my goals thanks to Prof. Bruce real estate investment and business coaching. I adopted the right business model and implemented it fearlessly because of his input. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Peter. And so each of you, I want you to be thinking as we go through this, what kind of a business you're going to establish. You don't have to do that today. It may take some time. You've got to be creative. You've got to think of ideas. Some of them are going to be terrible. But before you start a business, okay, everybody on the call, before you start a business, you have to wait until you've developed your business model and I've had a chance to look at it. Okay, so I don't want you to just run off tomorrow and start a t-shirt business. I actually brought a t-shirt here. I don't know, Jimmy, you help me out here. Can you actually read the what's on the back of my shirt here?
Oh gosh. Fall down 7 times, get up 10, get up 8.
Right.
Not
It's
wearing
an
my
old,
glasses.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So
That's okay.
it says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. It's a Japanese proverb. And I think Jayme really, really exemplifies that. So everybody join me in doing this.
Ah, thank you. I probably fell more than 7 times. I'd say like almost daily at one point, but
Oh my
yeah,
God.
I'm still here.
All right. Okay, so I've got a few more things. Jayme, can you stick around for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think it'll probably help everybody. All right, so let me just boot this up for you guys, and we're going to look at our assignment schedule. I had to change the assignment schedule a little bit, so I am an old prof, so you have some assignments. I would really like you guys to try. Some of you have already done it, so if you've already done it, that's fine. But I'd like you guys to think about what gets you up every day, what gets you up and excited every day. And I also want you and this is new, I also want you to think about how many pivots you've already made in your own life. I think that will help you. And I'm going to show you how I actually counted mine for the very first time this morning. And I'm going to show it to you in a minute. So if you don't mind, between now and next Thursday, email me what gets you up every day, what gets you up every day, what gets you pumped up and excited, and how many pivots you've already made during your life. And I'll show you how to do that. 2 weeks from today, 2 weeks from today, I want you to build a message map, which is kind of like an elevator pitch. And next week, I will go over how to do that. So you're going to do that. So I want you to be thinking about what idea you're excited about, and you're going to create a message map around that. And I'll show you, as I said, next week how to do that. The week after that, no, is that the week? Yeah, the following week, this is really important, guys. I need you, for June 4th, I need you to send me in advance at least two questions that you have, because it's going to be a student-led lecture. Instead of me feeding you guys stuff, you know, and lecturing, and even though we have wonderful guests, I want to hear from you, because if it's not two-way, this class won't work as well. I mean, if we were in a classroom together, there's 70 of us. If we were all in a classroom together, it would be easy to have you put up your hand, we chat back and forth. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately, in this circumstance, but what we do have is the ability for you to lead a class. So I want you to think, don't have to do it today, but sometime between now and June 4th, every one of you guys send me 1 or 2. You can be 1 or 2 questions. These are my burning questions, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can in an hour and a half. Then, this is the crux of what you're doing with me. On June 11th, you're going to have a 1-page business model. So by that time, by middle of June, I hope you each have got a business idea in mind. You've got that name, you've got the tagline, you've got an idea of how to create a business model. I'll go through that with you, and you're going to send it to me, and I'm going to critique it. If it's a good business model, give you the thumbs up. If it's an okay one, I'll hopefully help you to improve it. And if it's a terrible one, I'm probably going to tell you that. I'm not, as a coach, as a mentor, as a teacher, I'm not your boss. If you want to do something that's maybe I don't think is going to work, that's entirely up to you. But I will give you honest feedback, which I think is very important. I am going to teach you guys how to use a spreadsheet. Many of you obviously know that, but some of you don't. So that will come later in the course. And then at the end in July, you're going to learn to do a business plan. And Jayme, you're welcome to take the class if you want. And
you know what? I think it would be really beneficial for me, to be honest, because I've kind of just always thrown everything together. And I think having it, you know, with future expansions, I think it's a good idea.
You know, I'd love to have you on board, and I'm sure everybody would enjoy, you know, working with you throughout this. So here's my, what gets me up every day. I'm not kidding. It really motivates me. I get up every day because I think I can help people take care of themselves and their families for 3 generations by owning an above average performing real estate portfolio and their own successful personal business for life. I get up every day. I'm lucky. I've got people who seem to like me. I don't know why, but they do, and they seem to appreciate me. And I think I can make a difference. I've coached now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and I have about a 97 or 98% success rate. So it's not, I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be that, but it's a very high success rate. And I'm going to help everyone in this course launch a successful business. That's my goal, nothing less. All right. And so you're going to do this. What gets you up every day? Just as I said in the webinar, if you've watched that, I don't want a 10-page, one sentence or two. All right. And this came this morning from Roxanne. Roxanne gave me permission to share it with the class. Roxanne sent me, she's part of this class, what gets her up every day. And she said, because I can, because I must. I'm alive and capable, because something within wants me to create, do something productive, witness something that gives greater insight, inspire someone, bring value and meaning to what is often a very challenging world with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people dying, and the greatest generation ever taking it the worst. It's a really tough time. To apply my resources and skills to their potential and improve on what I can do in a meaningful and purposeful way. I get up because a course called Pivot has come my way. So I loved it anyway, and I put it on there, but it's a beautiful, beautiful statement. So that gets her up every day. And one of the things that I've noticed, because I've been doing this coaching thing now long enough, 7 or 8 years now, is that when I ask people to tell me what was their best moment in their life, they're often telling, oh, I remember when I was in high school, I was on the volleyball team, we were down 2-1, and I came back, our team came back to win 3-2, we won the regional championship. And to me, that's actually a sad, sad story, because to think that your best days were in high school, and these people, sometimes they're in their 30s or 40s, 70s, whatever, that's not good enough. I was with the Senators for a number of years. It was a wonderful time. People always want to talk to me about the hockey team, but that's a generation ago. I live in the present and in the future. I don't live in the past, and I don't want to be one of those guys that, yeah, back in my day, to heck with that. So live in the present, live in the future, live with hope, and live with faith. And I just thought Roxanne's comment was beautiful. All right, thank you, Roxanne. So for the very first time in my life, I said, I'm going to count the number of pivots I've made. So you're going to have to hear from me for a couple of minutes. All right, guys? Let me see. Yeah. So I went to university quite young. I was 15 when I went to McGill to get my engineering degree. And when I graduated, I couldn't get a job in Canada, because back then the age majority was 21. But they had just elected a new government in Australia who had lowered the voting age and the age of majority to 18. So as a young engineer, at 19 or 20, I could go to Australia and get a job. So I did. So pivot number one was I left Canada and immigrated with my girlfriend, who was later my wife, to Australia. While I was there, I was working for the New South Wales government at the Metropolitan Waste Disposal Authority as a young civil engineer. And while I was there, because of the work I was doing, I needed a little bit more training. So I went to the University of New South Wales and I got my master's degree in engineering science. That's pivot number 2 and 3. Pivot number 4 was I got invited to study at the Australian National University in Canberra, where I could do a little bit of teaching and get my PhD in urban economics. That was pivot number 4. Then when I was in Canberra, my dad, who was living in Ottawa, came to see me, and he told me his business was in trouble. And I said, why is it in trouble? He said, well, Bruce, just come back to Ottawa for 6 months and help me out. So I came back to Ottawa. What was supposed to be 6 months, that was 1983, it's turned into like 37 years. And I found out that my dad had invested in roller disco rinks. Jayme, do you even know what a roller disco rink is?
Heard of them, but not my time.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I don't even think there was disco music in Australia. I didn't know what they were. So it turned out my dad and 3 partners had built 6 of these huge warehouses, like 45,000 square foot acre warehouses, column free with 25-foot ceiling heights. And you would go and they had beautiful wood floors, and you'd go there. I'd never been to one, so I went. And you put on some roller skates, and they got the disco ball, if you know what that is, Jayme.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and they had, Donna Summer playing, disco, and you skate around in a circle, and then the music stops. And, I look around and go, oh, okay, everybody stopped, I'll stop. And then the music starts again. And, you now you skate in the opposite direction. So after an hour of this, I thought, So I went and gave my rented skates back. And the next day I said to the three partners who owned the operating business, I said, you know what? You keep the operating business, we'll keep the real estate, and we'll trade our half of the operating business for your half of the real estate. And they said, I was a young man then in my 20s. They said, oh, Bruce, the roller disco is a cash cow. and I said, you keep the cow, I'll keep the real estate. And they made that deal. 18 months later, the fad died, and you couldn't pay a teenager to go to a roller disco rink. So they went bankrupt, and we ended up with 6 huge warehouses that we were able to rent to large tech companies who were really gaining traction in the mid 80s. And so that's how I got my start in real estate, with roller disco rinks. And then I started to build other things, shopping plazas and office buildings and subdivisions. That was pivot number 6. And then these huge companies came in, Canderel, Colonnade, publicly traded firms, banks, insurance companies. Everybody started piling into that industry, and they had a cost of capital of 1%, and I had a cost of capital of 6 or 7 or 8%. It would be like me challenging Usain Bolt to a 100-meter race. He's probably going to beat me. So I had to get out of that, so I did another pivot. I pivoted to smaller stuff. I went into mini offices, which you would call co-working spaces today. I went into the mini storage business, Blue Heron Storage. You can see it on the screen here. And I started another business, which I'm going to tell you about, called PETA, P-E-T-A. That stands for Presidential Executive Travel Apartments. Some people think it stands for People Eating Tasty Animals, or People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. It does not. It was Presidential Executive Travel Apartments, which was kind of Airbnb before there was Airbnb. So I'll just tell you, because we have so many real estate guys on the call here, that I bought 16 ground floor condominiums at Holland Cross. So I called up the developer. That's correct, Rick. I called up developers who were building this condo project in Ottawa. This would have been in the 90s. And I think it was David Berger I talked to in Montreal. And I said, Mr. Berger, how are sales going? So Jayme, here's a skill testing question for you. When you ask a developer how sales are going, what's the one answer you get?
Probably that they're going really well.
Yeah, they're going great. And so I said, oh, that's good to hear. And he was selling lots of these condos. And I said, how are the ground floor condos selling? And he said to me, silence. And so I said, you've got 16 of them, isn't that right? He said, yes, I want to buy all 16. So you can imagine David looking at his phone, thinking he's got a sucker on the phone here, right, with him. And so I put in an offer. I bought them for not very much money. I bought all 16 of the ground floor condos, and I'll tell you why. Because each of these condos has access to the outside. So Presidential Executive Travel Apartments, we rented these fully furnished 1- and 2-bedroom condos to busy executives who were coming to Ottawa to do, some kind of an assignment, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And it was a very successful business, kind of Airbnb before Airbnb. And think about Airbnb, because we had ground floor access to the outside, people could come at 2 o'clock in the morning and they wouldn't be disturbing everybody, all the rich dudes in the upper floors. All right, so it was called Presidential Executive Travel Apartments. We had 16 of them at Holland Cross. And I'll just go through this quickly. And instead of getting $1,200 a month in rent for these condos, when we furnished them and we put them into the short-term rental market, we were getting $3,000 a month. So that's a big increase. Not too management intensive. We had very high quality tenants. We had very little bad debt. There wasn't a lot of competition back there. It's not like today. And we had really good managers who had good relationships with tech companies. And we had a simple exit strategy. If we didn't like the business, we could always sell them off individually. All right. All right. But what I wanted to show you is this slide. This portfolio, we ended up with 28 of these units in Presidential Travel apartments was making net operating income, that's what this is, NOI, of about $50,000 a month. And which means about $600,000 a year. So I owned that, my wife and I owned that. And then I had this idea, some of you know, to get an NHL team. And so what I did was I didn't sell these. I raised debt on these condos. And when the Senators went bankrupt a few years later, guess what happened? These all ran away. So I'm asking myself, and you can ask yourself about this too, what would my life be like if I had put presidential executive travel apartments in my wife's name? Instead of me raising debt, putting it into the hockey team goes bust, what would be, I don't think I'd be on this call with you, Jayme.
Maybe not.
I don't think so. I might be in Costa Rica sipping rum. But all kidding aside, Jayme made a very strong point earlier, and I summed it up, or my wife actually summed up. You don't have to set your clothes on fire to keep everybody else warm. And what I should have done is I should have done a little bit of creditor proofing. My wife was a stay-at-home mom with 5 kids, and I could have put presidential executive travel apartments in her name, and we would have 28 condos and townhomes today, probably generating $60,000 or $70,000 a month, which is a lot better than the Canada pension plan of $555 a month, right? So I made a mistake. So what makes me a good teacher and coach, I think, is that I've made pretty much every mistake. All right, that's a little story. So pivot number 8. So as I wanted to do something that had real national and international, implications. And so I had this crazy idea, just like you, Jayme, of bringing in an NHL team back to life that had not played a game since 1933. So the Ottawa Senators were original members of the NHL, the National Hockey League, but during the Great Depression, they went out of business. I think they moved to St. Louis, and then in 1934, they folded for good until we brought them back in 1992. So here is the picture of the Ottawa Senators. And this guy, this handsome guy here, Jayme, in the middle, that's me. And no comments about how young and handsome I was and how old and decrepit I look today. All right. And so I pivoted, number 8, to create a hockey team, the Ottawa Senators, to bring back a hockey team. We spent $485 million doing that, plus building the Canadian Tire Center. And I'm going to show you a very simple plan. So you remember I talked about bootstrap capital and self-capitalization? Just so you guys know, this applies to even bigger enterprises. So I had a very simple plan. I knew the franchise was going to be in the tens of millions of dollars. It turned out to be 50 million. So what I decided to do was buy 600 acres of land, put an NHL team in an NHL building in the middle of it, keep 100 acres, drive the value of the rest of the land up, and sell that. That's self-capitalization. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it actually did sort of work. We bought the property for $12,000 an acre, which wasn't very much, but times 600, $7.2 million. And the last sale out there was, I think, to Cabela's, which is a big outfitting store, and it sold at $832,000 an acre. So the land went from $12,000 to $832,000 an acre. So in a way, the plan was probably a pretty good one. The idea was to sell off the land we didn't need, put it in these Brinks trucks, ship it down to New York City to the NHL headquarters, give that money there. But if you think about it, that money didn't have to come out of my pocket. It came out of the increase in the value of the land. So that was the theory. So that is another form of self-capitalization, just with a few more zeros to it. Here's another picture of me with my group. And I think somebody on the call here said Terry Dennison was our lawyer at the time. Here is Terry. This is Cyril Leader, young Cyril Leader, who was the president of the Ottawa Senators for many years, Randy Sexes, Jim Steele, and this handsome young fellow, when he actually had here, is me. And you could see, guys, this was Terrace Investments Limited about 6 months or a year before we actually got the NHL franchise. You don't need a huge number of people to change the world. Mr. Obama, President Obama gives a speech, it takes one voice to change a room, and it takes one room to change a village or a town, and it takes one voice and those voices in the town to change the state, and that state can change the country, and it can change the world. He gave a wonderful speech. And And so, you know, if you think about your community, your town, your village, your state, your province, entrepreneurs are incredibly important to the economy, and they are going to become more important. With 6 million people unemployed in Canada, and maybe more than that now, maybe 7, and 30 million in the United States, many of us are going to become gigpreneurs, you know, entrepreneurs. We are. And you can see it doesn't take a huge team. This was maybe only 20 people to change certainly the future of the city of Ottawa. So let me just go to one more story, which is the one I'm going to finish with today, which is the night before we actually got the team, and there was it was a very intense competition. And this is kind of Jayme's story, but it's also my story. Jayme wouldn't give up. She just won't give up. She won't take no for an answer. Purrdy Paws would not exist without her determination, fierce determination. But I'm built from the same stuff, just much older. And the night before we got a franchise, there was like a 500 or 600 person gathering, you know, one of those big public dinners. And there were a lot of people at that dinner who were trying to get an NHL franchise. There was Hamilton, Ottawa, Milwaukee, Seattle, Portland, Houston, St. Petersburg, Tampa, probably a couple I've forgotten about. There were 8 or 9 or 10 bidders there, and everybody was lobbying, you know, so we were trying to convince the Board of Governors to give us a team. And one of the members of the Board of Governors of the National Hockey League came up to me fairly late in the evening, and he put his face very close to mine. He said, "Mr. Firestone, yes, sir. There's just one thing I want to tell you." "Sure, what is it?" "You will never, ever, ever get an NHL team in Ottawa. Just wanted you to know that." Now, I had spent $7.5 million buying some land. I'd spent at least $3 to $3.5 million putting the plans together to make this a reality. We had sold, Jayme, we had sold 15,000 priority registration numbers, like memberships, for cash. You know, fans were lining up to buy season tickets for a business that did not yet exist. You following me, Jayme?
Yep.
We had sold 500 original corporate sponsors. We had taken in millions of dollars of bootstrap capital, so to speak. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, you know, if I don't get this franchise, I'm going to have to find a new hometown. I'm going to have to move. And so what I said to the guy is, I said, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I think the NHL should give franchises to communities where they love NHL hockey, they love the league. And if you give a franchise to Ottawa, we will nurture it, we will take care of it, we will do our best. And I think you should reconsider it. And he said, "Absolutely not. You heard me." And he walks away. So I go and sit down at our table. We had about 120 people down there lobbying, you know, the NHL. So I go and sit down at my table, and some of the people who were there with me, Cyril Leader, Randy Sexton, Elliot Richardson, Gary Burns, Jim Durrell, the former mayor, came up, and they saw my face was white, and I wasn't saying much. And they said, "Are you okay, Bruce?" And for the men on the call, you know, when you're under a lot of stress, your voice tends to go up a little bit. You know, my voice is fairly deep, but I would respond by saying, "Oh, everything's good. I'm fine." You know, and they would look at me, "You sure?" "Oh yeah." And you know, I didn't want to tell anybody. But then Norm Green came over. He was the owner of the Minnesota North Stars, which later became the Dallas Stars. And he said, "What's the matter?" And I told him. He said, "Well, get that schmucky look off your face, kid, and get out there and hustle." So I went, "Okay, you're right." And I said, "Well, maybe that's one vote we won't get. I'm going to go get the rest." And so the next morning I get up and we continue to lobby throughout the early morning hours. Entrepreneurs tend to be up early. Oh, by the way, this is a picture of me after I was told we'll never, ever get a franchise in Ottawa. So the next morning we get up, we go down, and the Board of Governors, there were about 21 men, and they were all men in those days, were having breakfast. And I would visit with each one, you know, remember Ottawa, give Ottawa a franchise, we deserve it. And I look around the room, and there's Phil Esposito from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's also doing the same thing, lobbying. But I looked around, where's Milwaukee? Where's St. Petersburg? Where's, you know, Hamilton? Where are all the other bidders? There's only me and Phil there in the room. No one else was there. So between Phil Esposito representing Tampa and Bruce Barso representing Ottawa, the last thing that the members of the Board of Governors saw before they closed the door was my big nose, and Phil was right, you know, he's bigger than me, right behind me. Tampa Bay, Ottawa, Tampa Bay, Ottawa. So later that day, the pressure was like immense. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now just because we're ending soon. So the pressure was immense. So I decided I like to jog. So I said to my staff, look, I don't know, they're going to be there all day. I'm going to go off and jog for a bit. So I ran off and I come back. It's about 5 or 10 minutes to 1 on the day. And some of my staff were outside this hotel where we were staying. I said, Bruce, hurry up. So I jog in and said, what's up? The NHL has made a decision. I said, okay, what decision? We don't know. They just want us to be in our room, in our suite, and NHL security is going to come and get us at 1. And so I said, okay, awesome. So I go up there. I didn't have time for a shower. I just put on my suit and, you know, kind of towel off. And at 1 o'clock, the NHL security guys come and take us down through a back stair into the basement of the Breakers Hotel. The Breakers Hotel, if any of you have seen Jack Nicholson in The Shining, anybody put up your hand if you've seen Jack Nicholson? Okay, Jill has, Dave has, Rob has, thank you. It looked like the Overlook Hotel. And there we are in the basement, myself, Elliot Richardson, Randy Sexton, Jim Durrell, Cyril Leader. And we're in the basement, there's garbage everywhere. The pipes are dripping on us. And, you know, I'm expecting Jack Nicholson to come out with his axe, you know. And so I thought, oh my God, I think we've lost this thing. So I turned to the boys and I said, look, it doesn't look good. You know, here we are in the basement, you know. They don't put people in the basement unless there's bad news coming, I guess. So I was a little emotional and I said, we couldn't have done any more. We've done everything we can. If the NHL turns us down today, and you'll like this, Jayme, too, because it shows the never say die mentality of an entrepreneur. If the NHL turns us down, we're going to have our own press conference. We're going to thank the NHL for allowing us to put this in place, to participate. And we're going to say to the people at home, and we're going to say to the NHL, look, we weren't successful. We're going to work on our bid, and we're going to come back next year. And by golly, next year we're going to get a franchise. We just didn't do it this time. So we all sort of girded up our loins, so to speak, and we went into the room. Finally, we were allowed upstairs into the room where the Board of Governors were meeting. And my friend Marcel Lebu, who was the owner of the Quebec Nordiques, which later became the Avalanche in Colorado, comes up to me and he gives me a big handshake and a big hug. He says, "Félicitations, mon ami." And I thought he was congratulating us for a good try. I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, okay, sure, thanks." And then we go up to the front of the room, and there is on a piece of paper written, which I didn't know until I saw the paper, the NHL is pleased and proud to announce today conditional memberships have been given to the cities of Ottawa and Tampa. And I went, oh my God, we just won this thing. And Randy Sexton was a little guy. He must have jumped 4 feet vertical, and everybody was hugging. And I might have been a bit teary-eyed because I'm more emotional than those guys. I said, we just won this thing. And then I turned to the president of the National Hockey League, and I said to Mr. Ziegler, who was soon to be replaced by Gary Bettman, I said, John, what was the vote? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what was the vote for Ottawa? He said, oh, no, it was unanimous. I said, you got to be kidding me. It was unanimous. We got every vote. He said, yeah, absolutely. So I thought, this is awesome. So I went back home and we started our season ticket drive. We raised $22.5 million. We sold $22.5 million in season tickets in the next 10 days. That's part of Bootstrap Capital. Everybody clear on that, right? Doesn't matter whether it's 22,000 or 22 million, just more zeros. And I get a call from that member of the Board of Governors. He calls me up and he said, hey, Bruce, how you doing? Good, good. He said, you remember that comment I made the night before you were awarded the franchise? You know, you will never, ever, ever get a franchise. I said to him, yes, I do. I don't think I'll ever forget that. He said, I just wanted to know why I said it. Oh, okay, why? And he said, myself and 3 other members of the Board of Governors decided to go and talk to every bidder and say that Hamilton, Milwaukee, Seattle, Portland, Houston, you will never, ever, ever get a franchise in Houston or Seattle or Portland, because we wanted to test these people And the only two people who didn't quit lobbying and pushing was you and Phil Esposito. And those are the people we gave the franchises to. So when you hear from Jayme that she pushed harder, that was her language, not mine. That's what entrepreneurs do. They pull rabbits from the hat. The more difficult the situation, the more creative we are. I have seen entrepreneurs in positions that make Flash Gordon and Batman look like, I don't know, what's Hello Kitty. These situations that Jayme has faced, and I have faced too. And this is the last comment because we're at 1:30, is that when bad things happen to you, and they will, and they have, you get 3 days. The first day you can feel sorry for yourself. The second day you can be mad at the world. But the third day, by golly, you get up, you get a little bit of exercise, and you get on with the rest of your life. That's what entrepreneurs do. So you guys have got a little bit of assignments to do. This is a recorded session. I will download it to YouTube, upload it. Everybody gets a link, and I will send you a reminder about what the assignments are. I hope you had enjoyed this today. I really, really appreciate everybody on the call. And Jayme, again to you, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So we're right on the bottom of the hour, guys. Be well and be safe.
Bye.
Bye.